So let's just talk about some of the candidates for where the reference point might come from. So most early models assume that the reference point was the status quo, right? I give you a mug, your reference point is whatever mugs you had before plus that mug, because that's the immediate status quo. And if you read prospect theory, which is assigned for next week, which is a really, really famous article by Kahneman and Tversky, they assume the status quo is the reference point. Okay? A richer model is to assume that it's actually lagged consumption, so it's recent past consumption. Okay? So let me say, why is that a better assumption? Think about a lottery. Okay? If you win the lottery, whether you take the money as a lump sum now or as an annuity over 20 years, which are your usual two options, somebody has calculated, and you should know this if you ever win the lottery, I can't remember. One of them is overwhelmingly a better idea, and I can't remember which. What, the annuity? Yeah, I think that's right, but the annuity is overwhelmingly a better deal. And there are people who will come and for a fee will convince you to take the lump sum and then give you an annuity, and it's a huge ripoff. But the point is that your reference point obviously doesn't, right? There's psychological research that suggests pretty strongly that people get used to being a lottery winner and are no happier in the long run. Okay? But it's just intuitively obvious that they're happier for a while. Probably, I would think that would have to last at least a year. I have spent all the money in a year, but so the immediate status quo can't possibly make sense out of that, even though we don't have really hard evidence of it. It just doesn't. It just seems really implausible. Think about the Easterlin paradox, right? We're sort of saying the Easterlin paradox. Well, people are always comparing them. People aren't comparing how they're doing now to how their grandparents did right at the end of World War II. They're comparing themselves to how they did last year, right? But if their reference point was always the immediate status quo, then getting a raise would just never matter because your reference point would adjust immediately. We don't believe that. We believe that it's lagged, right? The other thing that's nice about this is that there's a relatively straightforward way to mathematize it, which is where we always need to go in economics, right? It's one of the things that defines the line between psychology and economics is that we have math. Now, in fairness, there are some psychologists who try to do mathematical modeling, and in some cases successfully. And indeed, Kahneman and Tversky were both psychologists. But by and large, it's economists that try to take this stuff rigorously to math. So here's a simple mathematization of this assumption. The reference point at times t, let's say now, is some weighted average, where gamma is the weight, of the reference point last period plus your consumption last period. So you had a reference point last period that was based on something from the past, and then your consumption last period was different than your reference point, and so your new reference point is somewhere in between. So if your income last year was, let's say your income 2 years ago was X, and then last year you got a raise, then your reference point now is going to be somewhere in between what you were making 2 years ago and what you were making last year, right? So what this does is it says this allows a richer model of how the past affects your present reference point. So let me show you that mathematically. And this is, I'm going to buzz through this. This is just math for fun. This is not math that you need to really know or remember, and you certainly won't be tested on it. What I like to do with this kind of thing is to say, right, because this extends back into the past potentially infinitely, so let's look at what that looks like if we actually extend it into the past. So what does this equal? This equals gamma times ct minus 1, which is just some constant, plus 1 minus gamma times rt minus 1. But rt minus 1 is determined by stuff from the past too. So what is that? Well, rt minus 1 is gamma times c of t minus 2 plus 1 minus gamma times r of t minus 2. Well, now we can take another step and extend that. That's gamma c t minus c of consumption in the last period, t minus 1, plus gamma times 1 minus gamma times consumption 2 periods ago, plus 1 minus gamma squared times the reference point from 2 periods ago. But that's a function of stuff from the past, gamma times c of t minus 3. And what I'm actually going to do is, you can see the point. I'm not going to take you that far into it. I'm just going to write it out as a continuing sequence and say that's going to be 1 minus gamma squared times c of t minus 3 plus, it's going to wind up being gamma times 1 minus gamma squared times c times 3 plus gamma times 1 minus gamma cubed times c of t minus 4, etc. And so what you have is, one second, all of these, did I make a mistake? Okay, and hold on a second. All of your reference point now is influenced in a sort of declining way by all of your past experience, right? And then gamma is going to tell us something about how quickly your reference point adapts, right? And I'm definitely not going to forget your question. I'll come back. So, for example, as gamma approaches 0, right, what's happening is that there's not very much weight on last period's consumption, and the weight is all thrown way back into the past. And so there's this really strong momentum of the effect of past experiences. Now, there's some research that's come out recently. I can't remember who I did this. I want to say it was Ulrika Malmondier, but I may be wrong. That shows that people who were born and grew up during the Depression in this country always have, they always, and I can't remember what the outcome variability she studies, but they always wind up throughout their entire lives having a lower reference point for consumption and being, they're more likely to save. They're always more likely to save, no matter how old they get, right? Which suggests that there's like this really strong imprint of far long ago consumption on their reference point. If gamma, so that would be slow adjustment, slow adaptation, and then as gamma approaches 1, you're putting almost all of the weight on the most recent period, and these earlier periods start to fade away pretty quickly. Yeah? Now, one of the things that's nice about this model, question. Sorry, say it again? The value of gamma. So, tell me your name. Sam? The Sam's question is, why would gamma stay the same over the years? So can you tell me a story for how it might change?
I just don't understand how that equation.
Oh, why does gamma stay in there?
Why would the value of gamma be
So if gamma is how fast your reference point responds to recent changes in your income, let's say. I mean, I have absolutely no basis whatsoever for assuming that how fast your reference point responds to recent changes in your consumption or income is the same over the course of your life or changes. My own experience, that I like to say I'm about halfway through my life, I'm hopeful, is that everything changes over the course of time, right? Mostly for the worse. No, that's not better. Physically, everything changes for the worse, and emotionally, everything changes for the better. So I would have no particular reason psychologically to assume that it stays constant. But in economics, we got to simplify something, right? Or we're just going to get lost. So let's just make a simplifying assumption that it stays the same. It's quite possible that what really happens is that things that happen to you early in your life stay for a really long time. That would imply a really small gamma. But that later on in life, you don't actually care that much about the recent past, which would imply a fairly high gamma. I would believe that. But at a certain point, as an economist, you just got to say, okay, yes, but let's just move on and simplify somewhere. But you could dig into this and have a time-changing value of gamma and see what happens.
Just take the log of gamma.
So if you took the log of gamma over time,
Yeah.
you could logarithmically decline over increase over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I buy that too. But I promise you, it's going to make the math really messy. So it's always a trade-off between do we capture useful intuition by making this math harder, and if so, is the intuition that we capture worth the pain of the math? Economists aren't that good at math, as it turns out. There's a famous saying that when Robert Solow left physics to become an economist, the average IQ of both professions went up. Okay, the other thing that's nice about this, which is not particularly important, but it's worth noticing because it comes up a lot in behavioral economics, is that this model actually embeds the status quo as a special case. Now, this is a trick that we like to do a lot in behavioral economics. Is to say, let's have a new model, but a new model such that if you set some parameter equal to 0 or 1, you'll get back to the standard model. So this is a case where lagged consumption, if you set gamma equal to what? 1. If you set gamma actually equal to 1, you get the almost immediate status quo, right? Then the reference point is just what you had in the most recent period, and you can just make the most recent period as close to the present as you need to in order to get back to status quo. So that's a really nice feature of any model, that it introduces some behavioral extension, but under certain parameter values, it embeds some other model that you're testing against. We'll see that over and over again. Okay, here's a couple of others that psychology suggests, a couple of other candidates for reference point. I'm going to start moving a little bit quicker here. So aspirations and goals, right? So psychologists talk about two kinds of aspirations and goals. Falling short, they find, falling short of who we want to be causes feelings of dejection. Falling short of who we think we should be causes feelings of agitation. I can assure you that economists don't care about the difference between the two. They're both negative. Okay, so here's an interesting piece of psychological research, which is on B-Space. This is Heath, Larrick, and Wu, and they asked subjects the following question. Charles and David both follow workout plans that usually involve doing 25 sit-ups a day. One day, Charles sets a goal of performing 30 sit-ups, whereas David sets a goal of 40. They both find themselves, I'm assuming that they're in different places and not talking to one another, they both find themselves feeling very tired after performing 34 sit-ups and at most have the energy to perform one more. Who will work harder to perform the 35th sit-up? Right? And the preponderance of our answers, 82% of people based on their own psychological intuition, said David, right? Who set the goal of 40 because he's in the domain of losses relative to his goal, so one more sit-up matters a lot. Charles is in the domain of gains relative to his goal, and he's like a taxi driver, right? He's like, no, I've made my rent, I'm going home. Social comparisons, we talked about this already. The idea that people compare their outcome to others is a central theme in the economics of happiness. Very briefly, I'm just going to say a couple things about the economics of happiness because it's interesting. So controlling for their own income, hours of work, etc., people's happiness is decreasing in the income of those working in similar jobs close by, right? And we've already seen this. This is essentially part of the Easterlin stuff. Increases in average national income do not cause significant increases in happiness, but within a country, those who make more are happier. And the hypothesis is because they're comparing themselves to a social comparison point, which is sort of the average or something like that. Keeping up with the Joneses. Newmark postal weight were labor economists controlling for economic circumstances. A woman is more likely to work. If you look at labor economics, you'll find that estimates of labor supply elasticity are almost always based on women because men, most men in Western society just work like automatons. 40 hours a week, boom, go home, feed the kids, go to bed. And their wage elasticity is almost exactly 0. For primary working males, it's just over and over again. So most people study women's labor supply, which is much more flexible and much more interesting to study. And what we find is that controlling for their own economic circumstances, a woman is more likely to work if her sister or sister-in-law works, and I love this, if their sister's husband makes more than their own husband. It's not pretty, but we promise you a rose garden. That's human nature. Happiness research. You can just look at this yourself. There are these different surveys that people do that try to get a handle on whether or not people are happy or not. This is what the Easterlin paradox is all based on. People are trying to get a better handle on this with trying to get high-frequency data, how you feel every 15 minutes. There's some really, really interesting research on this. Stylized results, okay? I don't have anything on B-Space about this. This is just accumulated from lots of different studies, most of which I haven't read. So I actually just got this straight out of Platon Cosetti's lecture notes, like, unashamedly. And here's what we find, okay? Marriage makes people happier, at least at first. Widowhood makes them feel much worse. Loss aversion. Gain a spouse, lose a spouse, right? Health is a huge impact on happiness. So I like to think of these three as sort of validating the data. Right? This is intuitively obvious. I like to think of these next ones as validating labor theory. Hours of work negative. That's how we model it, right? Labor, leisure. Leisure's nice, labor's not. Unemployment, controlling for income. Of course, it's not good because you lose income, but even controlling for that, unemployment makes people really, really unhappy, whereas retirement makes them happier. So apparently, some work makes you happier. People really don't like to be unemployed, even if they're getting enough money. So some work makes you happier, but then after a while, more work makes you unhappy, and so ultimately you're happy when you're retired. What does this tell us? Controlling for income, education has a negative impact on happiness. One possible interpretation that's been put forward is that controlling for income, people who pursue a higher level of education are more ambitious, and that ambition gives you a higher reference point in terms of goals and aspirations, and you're more likely to fall short of it. Bit of a stretch, could be true. Being materialistic, which psychologists are so much more fun than economics, because you get to say, I did a survey, I asked the following questions, and I'm going to claim that the answer to this question tells me whether or not somebody's materialistic. That's the kind of survey evidence that economists don't like. Psychologists love it, which makes psychology just a lot more fun. People that psychologists identify as materialistic, controlling for income, are way less happy. Take that or leave it. Here's a couple of factoids that, well, this is what we've already seen. So people, your own income makes you happier, but your comparison income makes you less happy. So that explains the Easterlin paradox, because we've already seen it. So you can take that with as many grains of salt as you want. The fourth, which is the one we want to focus on, and I'm disappointed I'm not going to have enough time to do this justice, and it's important because it's in the problem set. Recent expectations, which is slightly different from lagged consumption, okay? If you expect a painful dental procedure, then a mere checkup is a huge gain, even though your status quo is no procedure at all, and your lagged consumption is no procedure at all. If you were expecting to go and get a root canal, then a checkup is nice, unless you needed a root canal, in which case I can promise you getting a root canal is a huge relief. If you expect to spend $40 on an item, buying it at 30 feels like a gain, but not buying it at 50 may feel like a loss. But your status quo, right, was to not buy at all. So expectations for buying or selling is a very different assumption than lagged consumption, and probably more realistic. Why recent expectations? Well, because why not your immediate expectations? Because it seems to take some time to adjust. So if you are told that you're going to get a raise next year, your expectations go up immediately, but your reference point probably doesn't. That probably feels like a gain for a little while, and then you get used to it. So your expectations adjust to new news immediately, but your reference point doesn't. So recent expectations we think is a better candidate. Okay, so Cosetti and Raven model this in this very interesting and useful way that you can read about if you want. And it embeds lagged consumption as one of the things that affects recent expectations. Right? So it's nice, again, you extend the model in a way that embeds the model that you extend. That's nice. I'm not going to go through this experimental evidence. You can look at it. It's interesting. But I'll just touch on this last one. This thought experiment, which we can conduct very quickly. Tell your employees that they're getting a raise next month. 1 week before the raise, tell them you've changed your mind and see what happens. You haven't lowered their income. Well, boy, you've sure trashed their expectations. I need to talk about rational expectations. The Cosetti-Raven model, crucially, assumes what we call rational expectations. Okay? We want to look at whether or not the Cosetti-Raven model can embed social comparisons and goals and aspirations the way that it embeds lagged consumption. It depends upon an understanding of rational expectations. So what do we mean by rational expectations? Right? We know that rational preferences means that you have a consistent ranking that's transitive and complete. Rational expectations means something dramatically stronger than that. Much more problematic, okay, which is this. We say that you have rational expectations, a person has rational expectations if their beliefs about the distribution of possible outcomes is correct. So for example, in the stock market, suppose you've got a stock portfolio, oops, sorry, I put that in the wrong place, and you don't know what the returns for your portfolio are going to be, but there's going to be some distribution of returns. Hopefully it's positive. Could be super high, could be super low, could be in the middle. Rational expectations doesn't say you know what the return on your portfolio is going to be. Rational expectation says you know what the distribution that it might be is. Now, mind you, Ben Bernanke doesn't know what that distribution is in advance, but our model assumes that investors do. Daily income target, even more interesting, even more problematic for us. If you have a daily income target that's based on rational expectations, what it means is that your target, K, is based on what you expect to earn. But what you expect to earn is a function not only of the wage you expect to get, but also how much you expect to work, which means you have to have a correct understanding of the distribution of wages that you're going to face, and you also have to have a correct prediction about how your work effort is going to respond to those wages. Now, if we're assuming that people make their labor supply decisions on the basis of utility maximization, then the assumption of rational expectations is that they pick their target on the basis of correct expectations, and then when the time comes, they actually work. That the utility maximizing number of hours to work is the number of hours they predicted that they would work. So setting an expectation that says, I'm going to work 10 hours a day next week, is not rational expectations if it's not the utility maximizing thing to do next week. Okay? So I'm sorry, I'm going to take you over for 1 minute. I will try very hard not to do this again, but I really want to get this done. If the target, K, is based on your expectations about W times L in the future, and then in the future, you're going to go out and actually, sorry, that should be an L, work, L star, the utility maximizing number of hours, that solves some maximization problem where you maximize your utility over L, taking K into consideration. It better be the case that when you take the K you predicted and plug it into your utility maximizing function when you actually decide on your labor supply, that the L star you get back out is the one you started with. That's rational expectations. And when your expectations depend not just on some exogenous distribution like the returns on your stock, but also on your own utility maximizing choices, this turns out to be a very, very strong assumption. And it places some very strong demands on the model, as you will see in the problem set. Okay? Which is why I took you a minute over, and I'm very sorry. But hopefully that will help the problem set. And if it doesn't, post questions to the forum.